This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, Sean. Thank you for joining me today.
Good morning, Bonnie. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Sean, just tell me a little bit about yourself before we get into a few questions today.
Sure. Well, I've been working in hospitality for most of my adult life. Today, I'm the managing partner at the Frontenac Club in Kingston, which is a boutique hotel right downtown. I've also been and currently serving as the past chair of the RTO9 board, amongst other boards that I sit on within the region and even outside of the region.
Great. So how long have you actually been involved with RTO9 then?
Well, my first chance to work directly with RTO9 goes back to 2015, where I was invited to play a role in determining and evaluating some of the partnership fund applications that came in. It was through that involvement, I think, that led me to join the board in 2017. And then I had the pleasure of being invited to be an executive member of the board and did that, and then even fulfilled the role of chair, as I said, fulfilled the role of chair for a term.
Great. So is there anything in particular other than the initial reach out that you were sort of interested in the RTO9 board?
Well, I think the regional tourism organizations are really important components in sort of the ecosystem of tourism. So I've always been interested, in fact, had dealings with other RTOs throughout my career where I found them to be really supportive and particularly important in connecting, government with support organizations that were quasi-governmental and municipal, as well as working directly with partners. So for me, getting involved was an easy choice based on the experiences I'd had with other RTOs, and in particular, my involvement with the partnership funds got me very interested in how I could support our region.
Well, you definitely have been an asset to the board, I can say that. So what role do you see the regional tourism organization playing in tourism across southeastern Ontario?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the RTOs are sort of a linchpin or the connective tissue in a lot of ways in tourism for our region. Our region in particular is pretty diverse. I mean, we have world-class assets in this region, as well as a number of new burgeoning partnerships and regions that are finding their footing and some that are extremely well developed. So I think the RTO is in a critical coordinating role for those regions. I think there's a critical role of advocacy and making sure that the provincial government fully understands what the needs of this region are. I think there's a huge opportunity to continue to develop the region as a whole. I mean, we have right now 9, some would argue 10, separate, sub-regions within RTO9. So playing that connective role, I think, is so important, and it's really probably been a strength of you and the team, is to be able to manage all of those relationships successfully and continue to grow them and keep them moving in the right direction. I mean, ultimately, I think the RTO really is what the vision and mission represent, which is really about being a terrific strategic partner for the destinations, for the municipalities, for operators on the ground. And I think that's really where RTO shines when you're that connective tissue between all of those groups.
Great. So just where do you see tourism going in the next 3 to 5 years in southeastern Ontario, or globally, I guess, even?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty broad question. For me, I'm very interested in how destinations actually carve out a distinctive and unique reputation for themselves. The concept of localhood, of how is Picton truly Picton, and why is Picton different than another destination you could be at, or why is Brockville a singularly unique place based on the assets that it has to be different, or how does Kingston continue to grow its reputation and be really locally, be significant within its own local marketplace, but then grow its reputation. So for each of our destinations, I think it's that idea of being authentic and true to its own character that I think will distinguish it from other places. You know, I think Southeastern Ontario, and I'm a little biased because I grew up here and now I have a business here, and you know, I've moved back to this area after having lived in other parts of the world. I really think that there are world-class attractions and experiences that can be had here, and in some ways I don't think that that's necessarily well known to the traveling population out there. I think a lot of Ontarians and a lot of Canadians over the next year to 2 years, because of limited travel abroad, will discover those things. So I think that there will be you know, a steady growth in business where we see lots of Canadians around us. And what I'm hoping that allows us to do is prepare ourselves for that pent up demand of international travelers that haven't been able to go anywhere, that are going to look to Canada as a safe and healthy destination, and to our region as a particularly good example of good practice and interesting attractions. I think we're going to be quite busy with that, and I think Southeastern Ontario just needs to be prepared for that.
Okay, so speaking of interesting attractions, what would be what is your favorite thing to do in Southeastern Ontario? And tell us a bit maybe about the last trip you've taken and what made it memorable.
Well, I really do love to golf, although I don't play as much as I can. And there's great golf in this region, but I also I love you know, just the lakes and the woods, and how accessible it is to get to a great lake that you can swim in or take a kayak or a canoe out. And just getting out of the water. I grew up on the St. Lawrence River, so getting out on the water is really going home for me. So all of the lakes and rivers and waterways in this region are just, in my mind, spectacular, and how accessible they are, you know, to get to, whether you're biking or by car or whatever it is. I find that, you know, just to be pretty amazing. And you know, just recently I had a chance to go to a concert, you know, which is something that seems fairly simple, but given the last couple of years, hasn't been something we've had a lot to do. And it was outside and beautiful, and you know, I really enjoyed that. And that's, you know, in our region, we don't have, sorry about that. In our region, we don't have these massive venues, but we have these really wonderful spaces where music can go on, and squares and outdoor venues. And I just think that that's so unique to our region. And when they're utilized the way they were the other day, it was just fantastic to be a concert goer in that environment.
That's awesome. Thanks, Sean. And I know you're extremely busy running the Frontenac, so just thank you for your time today. And we do really appreciate all the volunteer time you put on our board of directors. So have a great day.
It's a pleasure to do it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about the phone call in the middle.